Today, I'm going to show you how to become a hacking pro in IO tech. I know I'm usually a deving YouTuber, but I think this minigame in IO is pretty fun, and it helps, do some problem-solving skills in your noggin, and I low-key like playing games more than actually developing the games. How an IO hack works is we have our 5 outputs and 2 inputs, and it will randomly generate a correct combination of 5 numbers, plug it into a randomly selected equation that kind of looks like this. I think the coefficients could be randomized because they seem to be randomized from 1 to 100. And then you can get your answer out of this here. So it uses the same combination for both equations, plugging into each of these letters. So in this example hack, this will be the correct combination of 5 numbers. Then it will select these 2 equations randomly, and these are the correct answers that will be displayed. So your hacking console will look something like this. And now, when you make a change to a number, let's say I change this to 0, that means it will re-plug in your new set of numbers. So I'm gonna put this in the calculator. Actually, I can mental math this. So since I changed C, that means there would be 100 more, since 0 times negative 100 is 0, and before it was negative 100 times 1. So it would probably increase this number by 100. And here, since all of these are multiplied by each other and multiplied by 0 just negates it all, that means we only calculate E times D, which should be 8. Alright, now the strategy I use is called singling out one number and sweeping. So there are 3 patterns you want to look out for. A constant offset, which is an input that changes one of the outputs by like +1, and it isn't influenced by the other numbers. Similar inputs are 2 inputs that do the same thing to one output, and non-similar inputs are not similar inputs. They like add a high number to an output, but there are no other inputs that can undo that one. So let me show you what I mean by here. So here, I have singled out negative 580 because the answers is the blue line must be negative 580 and the pink line must be negative 34. I have them dotted. The dotted one is what I want to reach. And similar inputs is B and C. When I change C, it increases it by 100, and if I increase B, it decreases it by 100, which cancel each other out. Using this strategy, I could decrease C and increase B, which will effectively do nothing to the blue line, but in the pink output, they're not similar inputs. So I can manipulate the pink line doing this by canceling it and trying to get closer to the number negative 34. And eventually, I reach negative 34, but I haven't completed my cancellation for the blue line. Therefore, this strategy is a bust. This is where I have 2 options. I target negative 34 instead and try to find similar inputs for that to get the answer, or I have to switch up the combination of numbers. I redo the retargeting number 1 thing on 580. So let's say I change all the non-similar inputs and I somehow end up with 580 again. So doing this, I somehow end up with 580 again. And now I have negative 580 with different non-similar inputs. In this specific example, there are no constant adds. But now I can do the cancellation method until I get closer to negative 34. And eventually, I solved it. The pink line and the blue line are aligned. The reason the strategy works is because the right answer must include one of the both numbers, right? That means if we filter out every combination that doesn't have the first input solved, it just significantly reduces the amount of combinations we need to test for. We're going to have to find a different way, a different pattern to try to match this line with this line. And since we know the answer has to be along negative 34, we need to find a different way to get negative 34 while changing to the blue line. And that's because in our similar coefficients example, the ratio to cancel is 1 to 1. But usually the ratio to cancel is different to that. In this equation, let's say instead of B increasing it by 100 and C increasing it by 100, we have A increases one output by 400 and the other one increases it by 200. Obviously, if we increase A once, we increase that value by 400, and if we decrease B twice, it will lower by 200, then 200 again, which is 400, canceling out what we did with A. So in this case, this basic ratio of 400, 200, if we want to cancel out, we have to increase A once and then decrease B twice. And here's a slightly more complicated example, 3 and 4. In order to cancel out, we have to increase A 4 times, because 4 times 3 is 12. And if we increase B 3 times 4 is also 12, it will cancel out. And here, this is the same 3-4 ratio. If we increase A by 3 times, or if we increase A by 4 times, we will get 1,476. It will change by this much. And if we change B 3 times in the opposite direction, we will still get 1,476. Therefore, it cancels out. Now, you might be thinking, what if there's an exponential combination where you can't apply this ratio strategy because there's an exponent, the ratio will change as the exponent changes? 1, those are really rare, and 2, even if there is one, doing this strategy where you just test how to cancel out should work, since even though you got one of the lines correct and you can't use the cancellation method to get the other line. There has to be a combination. There has to be a different combination where it equals -34. And when you search for every single combination for -34, you will eventually find the right answer for both of them, since the answer has to include one combination where it equals -34. That's why this method is so effective. And worst case scenario, you can brute force it, and with a lot of practice, this process becomes a lot easier once you hack enough. Alright, I hopped in a quick match where I will showcase the strategy, and this match took around 30 minutes. It lasted until I slept on the 3rd day, and I hacked all of Reservoir and basically all of Lab. Alright, I begin the hack by setting it all to 1, and I tried to target the first input on the top, and I ended up getting lucky and got the answer when I got the first input, which is why this strategy is pretty effective. Sometimes you can get lucky like this, and it saves you a whole lot of time. Alright, for this level 3 hack, I struggled a lot more. I targeted 177, and 177 had a lot of similar coefficients where a bunch of the numbers did the same thing. And you might think that makes it easier. No, it makes it a lot harder. That means there's way more combinations you have to test with the cancellation method. And eventually, I abandoned 177 and tried to target -114, only to realize that -114 had no similar coefficient, so it'd be easier to do 177. And eventually, I had to keep changing the factors or the ratio of each coefficient until I eventually hacked the crate open. Alright, this crate also took me a minute and a half, and this one was a little rough because this one had 2 similar coefficients for the top number, and though when I was doing cancellation with every single combination, trying to search for the second number while maintaining the first number, I realized that none of those combinations worked. So that means I either have to completely change one of the factors or do the ratio technique where I change a certain series of numbers that will change that will I have to get I have to target the same number again but with different numbers and do the cancellation method with a different ratio of factors. Or in this case, I just targeted the second number instead, and when I targeted the second number, I accidentally got the answer. Alright, this one I struggled with a zero hack, and not all zero hacks are hard, but thinking it's easy, or like me, underestimating it, will make you hack longer than you need to. And when the hint came in, I basically got the answer, since the hint gave me, since it bypassed a code that heavily affected the zero, which eliminated a bunch of possibilities of what the answer could be. Alright, for this hack, it's just like the first example I showed you. When I targeted one number, I ended up getting the answer right off the bat. And there are easy puzzles like that. That's why I use this strategy a lot. It's these really fast hacks that really matter. I don't want to do a more consistent strategy, but it's consistently... Now, here's another ideal outcome here. I targeted one number, I did cancellation, and I got the answer relatively quickly. Alright, I think you guys understand the gist of how to use the single one number out and then sweep through all the combinations with that right answer. And the 2 paths in case you get stuck is just retarget the same number with a different combination of non-similar inputs, or target the other number and hope that it's easier. And now I'll show the rest of the hacks at like 5 times speed or 2.5 times speed.